What's up, everyone? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I want to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. And break down what's happening with the overall markets. We have big pieces of news coming out, not to mention big updates from the Fed. But let me just mention that I am not a financial planner. Make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice. And also, if you guys can, please smash the like button. It not only benefits me, it benefits the entire community as a whole. Looking at SPY, we have this big downtrend that's been established for quite some time. And what happened was we saw a nice rebound today, exactly as you predicted yesterday. I said the market may attempt to rebound, and SPY closed in the green, so did the QQQ. But amidst this rebound, I want to make it very clear that we were not able to break some critical resistance levels. We broke some, but not everything. And I just want to note that one resistance really stopped this market from really continuing to push. We ended up getting a rejection off it at the very end of the day. So this makes it look like, to me, the market's going to dip a little bit in the morning tomorrow, and we'll have to watch and see if the bulls could step in, as we're going to be looking for a very, very big test. So I'm going to break down more information about this on SPY, ES, and the others in just a couple of minutes. Let's first talk about some data. What data comes out for tomorrow? Tomorrow is going to be Wednesday, August 7th, 2024. Fortunately, there's not really much data coming out for once, so the market's not going to be as reactive. We just have the 17-week bill auction at 11:30 a.m. and the 10-year notes auction at 1 p.m. So very, very minor data. Not much is coming out after all the crazy data days, which led to sell-offs. Now, the next question is what's happening with the Fed? So I just want to make it very clear. It seems to me that the Fed is not going to be giving us an emergency meeting, an emergency rate cut, unless we get some kind of black swan event or something really, really big, like a credit crunch event. I don't think that's very, very necessary right now. We did see unemployment spike a bit, which has led to a lot of recessionary indicators going off, but we're not necessarily there. Now, the situation with Japan is affecting a lot of borrowers here in the USA, and they had to start liquidating a lot of assets to start repaying their debt because of how we saw interest rates go up in Japan. So this is affecting the US dollar, it's affecting the US markets, but this is not necessarily like a real estate crash or anything that extreme, in my personal opinion, so far. I do believe, however, that with these indicators going off because of unemployment spiking, there is a good chance that we could be entering a recessionary environment, straight up a recession. I wouldn't necessarily rule that part out, as there is a lot of contraction in our economy. I'm just trying to say that right now, this is not necessarily enough for the Fed to just start an emergency rate cut. I don't really think that's going to happen. I think the Fed is starting to make that very, very clear. There's more Fed speakers who are coming out and actually saying this, whereas others are still saying the same thing. So it's kind of like all over the place, but there are a lot of them out there who are saying they're not going to be cutting quite yet. It doesn't make sense. And the market has to really kind of like take this in. For September 18th, the market believes there's a 71.5% chance the Fed is going to give us a 50 basis point cut. And there's about a 28.5% chance the Fed is going to basically give us a 25 basis point cut. The market's expecting the Fed to give us a nice cut, at least for September. This could be shifted depending on CPI for next week. But as of right now, there's no signal that there's going to be an emergency cut, an emergency meeting. And the market is just kind of like pushing based off euphoria because of that, based off a lot of hype. Now, there's also a lot of other things going on. The first thing worth mentioning is that, yeah, the US economy is weakening. Looking at previous data, there is weakness in the economy that's developing, and that is leading to recessionary fears, which are still slowing down the markets. On top of this, there's a lot of things going on in the Middle East. There's still a lot of talk about Iran, Israel, and the list goes on, and all the countries getting involved in this. I personally hope that there is not a large attack, but there are risks of that based on what we're seeing. And the threats are there, and the risks are very, very high, according to lots of U.S. officials, and also according to, Iran itself. So we want to be very, very careful with all this that's going on. I want to be very, very mindful of this, and just note that my words right now are not a history lesson. I'm not trying to go over the whole situation. I'm just talking about what's happening right now. If you want more information, you should probably just do your own research. That's not what my job is for the time being. On top of this, I just want to mention that we have Rivian and Supermicro announcing their earnings. Unfortunately, things are not looking too good. Supermicro announced a 10-for-1 stock split, which is good, but the shares are down almost 13% because earnings ended up missing. What do I mean? Well, EPS was only at $6.25, so the profitability is worse than expected. And then revenue is at 5.31 billion. That is just barely meeting expectations. Margins dropped to 11.2% only from 17% a year ago. That is not too good. And then on top of this, net income is only at about 352.7 million. That's something I just wanted to call out. The first quarter revenue is between $6 billion and about $7 billion, beating some estimates. But when it comes to their expectations of 5.59 to 8.27 billion, that's a midpoint of 7.48. That is below expectations. So guidance is not very strong. A miss in EPS and weak guidance is why the share price is down. Rivian had so-so earnings, so I want to note that the loss per share is at $1.13, but their cash flow is still negative, and their revenue is at about 1.16 billion. Wasn't really enough to really help us out as much. And if you look at the where we're looking in terms of all expenses, we're still at a loss of $860 million. When it comes to guidance, they reaffirmed a total of 57,000 units in production, a loss of about $2.7 billion. That is something that they have been saying at the same time. So it's kind of like within expectations, but the losses are still there and the share price is still down. So that's not so good. And also, there's lower than expected demand for EVs. They have been talking about that, how there's been a lot of significant cash burns. And that's part of the reason why they're kind of like resorting to more cost reduction methods. That's why the share price is down. So, not the best. There wasn't anything too exciting from that. So, the question is, what's going to happen to the markets? Well, I wanted to just say that in my video yesterday, I said the market's going to likely bounce a bit. And that is what happened. We called this move almost to a T. But I also mentioned to everyone, we're not just going to go straight up to fill our gaps. We're not just going to go straight up to watch resistance levels, right? We marked a lot of these. I mentioned to everyone to watch this 525 area on SPY. It's very simple. Break 525, and then we're going all the way up to about 528. You guys can see how SPY attempted to do so as we had this 50 EMA as resistance. SPY pushed only to get a huge rejection back down. So it rejected at the very, very end of the day. The last 2 hours were very bearish. So this makes me concerned. I am concerned about how SPY is moving here. And in order for us to turn bullish, we have to try to close above our 50 EMA. Notice that the 50 EMA is very stubborn since the sell-off started. We rejected 1, 2, 3 times off the yellow line, the 50 EMA. But look at the trend so far. We had a high here, the all-time high. We came down, made a lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, and we could be making another lower high. So it's not looking that great. The chart's very, excuse me, the chart is very simple in terms of levels. If we rebound, okay, watch 522.5 as resistance. If that breaks, we have potential to go back up towards 527.5. If we break that, we are going to turn more bullish, okay? If we break our 50 EMA. If we start dipping, it's very simple. Basically, you're going to be looking at 520, then 518. If 518 fails us, 515 is going to be our next target. If that fails, there's going to be a rug pull coming, and SPY is going to be dipping all the way back down below 510. So lose 515, we're bearish. Break 525 to 527.5, and we're more bullish. That's how simple SPY is. This chart is not looking that great. We got this big rejection right here. So I think going into tomorrow, we're going to be retesting 518 in the morning. I think there's going to be a big test of that. And we'll have to see if SPY could bounce off that or not. If we get a balance between 515 and 518, SPY could try to rebound and go back up towards our 50 EMA. And if we lose that support, we're going to be looking for a bigger dip. So it is possible we're about to get a big rejection, but this depends on the news involving Iran, any updates from the Fed, the uncertainty about the economy, and all these different factors. But just know the chart overall on SPY is still bearish. We're still on a downtrend. We're still rejecting off our 50 EMA, the yellow line you see. We keep rejecting off of that. So to turn bullish, we got to break it. We haven't done so yet, and we're still favoring the downside. So I think tomorrow there's going to be a test of 518 in the morning. If we don't hold that, 515 could come. That's going to be our last critical support. If we don't hold 515, I think SPY is going to get a big rug pull, and we're going to be likely revisiting our lows. So please keep that in the back of your mind. It is possible we're about to get a rejection in the markets, but it's not confirmed until we lose some key levels. Watch 518 to be tested in the morning. I think we're going to retrace a little bit, and we'll see if we get a bounce or not. The market is also flip-flopping like crazy. One day we're turning back up, the next day we're dipping. So that's the reason why I have to keep on adjusting my analysis because of how these charts are developing. So please keep that in mind. On top of this, we have ES. ES was trying to break above its 50 EMA, only to get a big rejection at the end of the day. If we reclaim 5272, look for 5300. If we break 5300, we're back to bullish. If we lose support right here at 5225, there's going to be a risk of us dipping all the way down to about 5180, followed by much lower levels. I also want to call out the bearish divergence forming right here on the MACD. So this is not the best of signs. Technically, there is an uptrend intact, but it's just barely there, and we're just barely holding support. So I want to be very, very careful with this. And actually, ES is in the red right now, so not the best of signs. So from how I see things, okay, if we lose support, this is going to dip. I think we're going to be testing support at 52.25 by tomorrow, and we'll see if we get a bounce or not. If you don't get that bounce, there's going to be a rug pull coming, so just be careful. I think we dip a little bit in the morning, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get from there. Looking at SPX, we pumped, rejected, pushed a little bit, rejected, pushed a little bit, and we're starting to reject again. So it's the same pattern again. We failed to really hold above our 20 EMA. We have a gap to fill below at 51.80. I favor it's going to be coming down to fill that gap. It looks a little bit weak to me, especially because we're below this previous resistance becoming support. So watch 52.50 as resistance. If we fail to hold that, we could be coming down to fill the gap all the way down to the 51.80s. I favor that a little bit more in my personal opinion. So I see a risk of downside, so just keep that in the back of your guys' minds. For Bitcoin, we're also rejecting here, kind of forming like a bearish divergence. If we lose support at 55,970, I think we might be dipping all the way down to the imbalance in the 55,000s. If we're bullish, you want to break past 57,000, then we'll start pushing up to the imbalance up here towards 58,000. Looking at how we're kind of churning right here, I think that there is a risk of Bitcoin dipping to this imbalance at 55,000 flat. So I do see a risk of that. We need to watch our 50 EMA for key confirmation, but there is a risk of a little bit of a dip, and we'll see if Bitcoin bounces or not off 55,000. So watch for that very carefully. For others out there, we have Nvidia. Nvidia is in a very, very critical place. Okay. Look at the trend. It's very simple. It's not looking that good. We had a high here. We came down to lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high, lower low, lower high. Are we about to make a lower low? We're struggling to hold above our EMAs. We were trying to. It was looking really good in the morning. And then what happened? We got this big little rejection. So it's not the best of news. To be bullish on Nvidia, you want to break past 104.5. If that breaks, we could be looking for a bounce for 107. And if we reject, look for a dip towards 100. If that fails us, we'll be dipping all the way down to at least 97.5, if not the lows. From a technical standpoint, it looks to me like Nvidia grabbed liquidity right here. See this wick right here? This is a liquidity grab. This was triggering stops from here. And then we're going to likely start dipping to at least 100. So I think we're going to test 100. If we bounce off that, we could rebound. If we fail at 100, there's going to be a dip coming. So look for a little bit of a retracement and see if we get a bounce or not. But this chart favors that a little bit more, in my opinion. For stocks like Tesla, unfortunately, guys, Tesla's also looking a little bit weaker. So one concern I have is that there's a possible head and shoulders on Tesla. See how there's like a left shoulder here, there's a head up here, and then there's a right shoulder. However, one important lesson about trading is to not solely trade based off patterns. The pattern alone is not going to give you the full picture. So the best thing to do is watch your levels. Okay, if Tesla, pushes and we end up breaking past 204, we're back to bullish. We could be retesting 208 again in the 210s. If we end up losing 195 to 192, I would say this range right here, which is where we had these supports today, we're easily coming down to about 188. The current trend has a head and shoulders, and we actually saw a rejection on Tesla at the end of the day, closing below our 20 EMA. This favors a retest of 195, if not lower levels. So this opens the door for more potential downside. I think Tesla's favoring a move back down to 195, not 192. We'll see if we bounce off that or not. So look for a little dip tomorrow, and we'll see what the reaction is. For the triple Q, well, actually, let's go over NQ, then the QQQ. NQ has the same thing going on. There's actually a downtrend that's being established. And what isn't too good is we have a double top forming. So the issue I have with NQ is that we close below all of our key EMAs. We need to reclaim 18,275 to really start pushing. We're barely at 18,000 right now. If we lose 18,000, we'll be tipping all the way down towards 17,000 900, and if that fails us, we'll be tipping all the way down to about 17,500. There's a double top like structure that's forming, and there is a risk of us dipping all the way down towards 17,800. With this risk forming, I think that we could start dipping lower to these lower levels, so just be careful. The double top is there, and this favors downside. But just to be safe, watch for confirmation. If we lose 18,000, we're bearish. If we break 18,275, we're bullish. We favor downside a little bit more for a test of 18,000 for tomorrow, and we'll see what kind of reaction we get. For the QQQ, we pushed all the way up to 444. We got to break 444 to turn bullish. That's very close to where our 50 EMA is. If that breaks, we're going to be looking for basically 448. If we don't reclaim 444, Look at our key support at 435. I think we're going to be testing 435 tomorrow. We'll see if this is developing a head and shoulders or not. If we lose 435, we're going to be dipping all the way back down towards the 420, the 420s, basically, in my personal opinion. So I think this chart's going to be testing 435 tomorrow. If that breaks, look for a little bit of a dip. If we hold it, we could rebound, but look for a little dip in the markets. Apple is also showing weakness. We're just really tight going back and forth and back and forth. We have 207.7 and then 211 as resistance levels, and we have support at 203. Notice how Apple's just going back and forth, back and forth, back and forth, and that's all it's doing. But it's starting to still get tighter and tighter, if anything. So I think that if anything, we're just kind of like forming a wedge like this. We're just getting tighter and tighter and tighter on Apple. So there's not really much going on with it. We're just going to wait for it to get tight. So tomorrow, expect some consolidation, and we'll see which way we break. But there is a risk of downside, considering how it's a little bit weaker than the markets looking at the current structure. Now, for the rest of the markets, Palantir, it's holding up quite well, especially after that nice earnings that we got. Watch support at 25.8. If that fails us, we're going back down to about 24 flat. And if we break past 26.5, we could try to rebound. There's a high here. We came down, made a lower high. It is possible we dip all the way down to the 25s all over again for a little dip. So we'll see if that ends up being the case or not. So just be very, very mindful of that. I do see a risk of downside, though, so just be careful. For Supermicro, not looking that good. A nice liquidity grab and a big rejection. It's going to likely dip tomorrow. Not good for semiconductors as well. So be careful, guys. There is a risk of some downside. We're going to have to be very, very open-minded for this, at least, nonetheless. For Rivian, it's going to likely dip all the way down towards 13 tomorrow, 13 flat. So I see some more downside for it, especially after earnings. I just went over that. SoFi kind of rejecting it, failing to hold our 20 EMA. If we reclaim 6.66, we're going to be looking for 7.04. If we don't reclaim that, there's going to be a risk of us dipping down towards 6.3 flats. And if that fails us, we'll be dipping all the way down to the lower sixes. That looks more favorable in my personal opinion. For the IWM, we're just trading sideways, but one concern I have is the fact that we did not break our 50 EMA. See the yellow line we rejected off of that? So if we break 207, this is going to start pushing up towards the 210s. If we fail and we're struggling to hold our 20 EMA, this 204 area, then we're going to likely dip all the way down to about 200. I favor that this has like a bearish divergence and a little bit of a risk of downside all the way back down towards 200. This could lead to a risk of downside, so I see a test of 200 coming. We'll see if we bounce off that or not, but we are looking more bearish. For AMD has a little rejection forming. Watch 132 as resistance and look at this dip right here. We could be dipping all the way down towards 124. I see a risk of that, so just be very, very mindful and very careful. Coinbase has a head and shoulders like Tesla. There's a left shoulder here, a head and a right shoulder. If we reclaim 198, we could try to invalidate this and start pushing into the 205 plus area. If the head and shoulders plays out, we'll be dipping back down to this wick around 183.5 or lower. With the head and shoulders, we favor downsides. Just keep that in the back of your guys' minds. For Amazon needs to reclaim 165 to turn back up. Because we came short today, we're just kind of flat. And if we end up losing 160, look for 158. I think it's going to be retesting 160, if not 158. And then we'll see if we bounce. It's still kind of like trading sideways. So we're just kind of stuck, at least for now. But we need to see it break 165 to turn back up. Otherwise, it's just completely range bound. For Meta, we're actually showing some strength. Meta is actually holding up decently. So this is one of the strongest stocks right now. However, there's one big however. These supports got to hold. We need to hold 488 and 482. We got to hold those. If we lose 482, this is going to be dipping into the 470s pretty easily. If we hold, we could try to rebound back up to 500. So tomorrow we're going to dip to at least 488. I see 488 coming a little bit lower. And if we bounce, this could still turn bullish and push into the 500s. If we lose support, there's going to be a big rug pull. So look for that tomorrow. It's going to be a big test. For Microsoft, not looking too good. We lost structure right here. We're actually below 400. We got to reclaim 404 to turn bullish. And if we fail to do so, look at 395 as support. If that fails, we'll be dipping all the way down to much lower levels and to the lower levels, in my personal opinion. So I think that we're kind of trading sides. There's going to be a risk of downside if we establish a lower high. I think we're going to be testing 395 tomorrow. Now, if we bounce off 395, we could turn back up to 400, but I think that's we'll have to watch how it reacts depending on the news and such, but look for a little bit of a dip. And then, like I said about Google, I've been saying this all day. I just don't like this setup. It looks bearish to me. It's been looking like this all day. So this is a big exception relative to the markets. This is going to easily test, in my opinion, 157.8 or so, and then dip lower. So I do see a little bit of a risk of downside just for now. For a few more things, the VIX is still dipping. It's still in the 27s, so we got this huge spike only for it to dip. That's why options are kind of like very strange right now because of the way implied volatility is shifting. That's why premiums are expensive because the VIX is still elevated compared to before, right? The VIX was stuck in the 12, 13, 15s for so long. We're at 27. That's why premiums are so expensive. And we also have the dollar. It's still dipping because of what happened with Japan. So I'm not really too worried about this. Yields went up just a little bit because the Fed might not be as dovish as the market had suspected. That's why yields are going up. So we'll see how things go. With that being said, I want to thank you all so much for listening. Please have a great day, guys. I will see you guys very soon, the next one before the market opens. Be prepared for a little dip in the markets. The market might dip a little bit, and we'll see if we hold support. If we lose key supports, the market dips more. If we hold support, we're going to bounce. We'll see. But just know, expect a little dip in the morning tomorrow, and we'll see how we end up going. Thank you for listening, guys. Have a great day. I'll see you guys tomorrow before the market opens, and peace out.